And good morning, and welcome to the Thurston County Board of County Commissioners agenda setting and work session for April, I almost said August, April 21st, 2020. I am John Hutchings, the chair of the board, and also present is Commissioner Vice Chair Ty Menster, Commissioner Gary Edwards, and County Manager Ramiro Chavez. And who else we have? We have the Assistant County Manager, Finance, Robin Campbell. We have Kurt Harden from Emergency Management Services, Tom Webster from PHSS, Scott Lindblom from Public Works, Shelley Slaughter, Director of Public Health and Social Services, and Gary Edwards, his right-hand staff. Robin Courts is also on with us as well. So with that, we're going to begin the meeting. Did I miss anybody?
No, I think it was accounted for. Who has joined? Okay.
Now, if anybody wants to join and listen in via conference call, the phone number is 360-252-9020, and your PIN is 1234. That's 360-252-9020. PIN is 234. Now we have an executive session at the end of this briefing that'll last about 30 minutes. So I'm going to try to push a hard stop at 11:30. So with that, we're going to begin. Was there anything that I've missed? Because we're all doing this from remote locations, our offices and such, and kind of get you out of sync. Am I missing anything, Ramiro?
No, I think Commissioner Menser would like to say something.
Go ahead, Commissioner.
Just wanted to clarify, are we going to be using the raise hand function, or do you want us to just, I know do you want us to kind of just speak up if we have something to say, or raise our physical hand and you'll look at the screen? What's best for you?
Let me see. I don't see a raised hand. I see a chat, but I don't see a raised hand.
You gotta click the participants button at the bottom.
Manage participants.
And then you'll see a list on the right, and then
raised hand. Okay.
Yeah, and then you can raise hand button, and then it'll light up.
Yeah, let's do that. Raise hand.
All right.
Thank you for that. I didn't see that function. I see it now. That'll make it a little more orderly as well, and allow for fewer interruptions. Okay, so starting off, we have a COVID-19 update. And this is going to be, I'm sure, Shelley Slaughter and Kurt Harden. But what I want to do is just again warn you, we have a hard stop, so let's be concise if we can, but get all the information out we need to. Shelley?
Good morning, Commissioners.
Good morning.
I will start, as I usually do, by giving you a situation report and then share a little bit of information regarding our plans for safe return to public life in the coming weeks and months. So as of the latest information that I have this morning, in Washington State, there's 12,085 positive cases of COVID-19 and unfortunately 652 deaths. In Thurston County, we stand at 92 cases this morning and 1 death. Regarding testing, in Thurston County, we have conducted 3,629 tests, and 3% have been positive. That 3% positive is compared to an overall statewide positive testing rate of 9%. Of our 92 residents that we have, 82 of those residents are recovered or recovering. How we define that is those are people that have been released from public health monitoring. The long-term effects of COVID-19 are not yet known. Of our 92 residents, during the course of their illness, 16 residents have been hospitalized. 75% of those hospitalized do have an underlying condition. Of our 1 death we had, that person did have an underlying condition. We have had no congregate care setting outbreaks. That includes long-term care facilities, jails, homeless shelters, and other areas such as that. In this last week, we have had 12 new cases diagnosed of COVID-19. And if you look at the geography of our cases in Thurston County, we do now have a zip code map that we are including on our website every Tuesday. And so this will be available on our website by this afternoon. And it shows a concentration of cases throughout Thurston County. In zip code 98576, there have been no cases reported. The highest number of cases in Thurston County have been in the 98513 zip code, which borders Pierce County. So that is not surprising to us. We're beginning to collect and analyze information about race and ethnicity of our cases in Thurston County, as well as statewide. We are also continuing to monitor our healthcare system and how they are doing. Emergency department visits continue to be down. Hospitalizations for COVID-like illness continue to decline. And our hospitals currently have PPE as well as adequate ICU beds and ventilation and ventilators available at this time. Any questions about any of the data?
I do not. Do you have any questions, Ty or Gary? Just jump in.
I just want to compliment the health department for.
Excuse me.
Apparently not.
Say that again, please.
I would like to just compliment the health department for their extra effort of keeping the public informed.
Thank you so much, Commissioner. We really appreciate that. We've got a lot of people working really hard, and it's very important to us that we have timely and accurate information available to the public.
And you're doing that around the clock, and I hear that compliment from around the county from a lot of constituents. They're very happy with the information that you're putting out, and you and Kurt are on this. So thank you.
Thank you. If there's no more questions about data, there's just one more thing I'd like to share with you, and that's regarding our local plans for anticipating a return to public life, or a rolling back of the stay home, stay healthy order in the coming weeks and months. And so I just wanted to talk a little bit about some of those elements that go into decision making that the governor and the Secretary of Health, as well as local public health, consider. And so some of those things that we are looking at include number of new cases by date of symptom onset. And what we're looking for is a downward trajectory for 14 days. We don't see that yet. We're very optimistic and hopeful about the data that we do have, but concerned about rolling back our stay home, stay healthy measures, which have been very effective in Thurston County, too soon. We also look at that percentage of tests that are positive over the last week, which I shared with you. We also look at the number of deaths reported over the 7 days. And then also we look at information such as transmission rates. So also often referred to as the R0, which is how many people are likely to get infected by one person that has COVID-19. We want to see that go down to be less than 1. So those are some of the data elements. Some other capabilities and capacities that we need in our public health and healthcare system are we need to significantly increase community testing. And so we're very happy about the testing that has been available in Thurston County. The Providence St. Peter Hospital has a Hawks Prairie Clinic community-based testing site, also known as a drive-through testing site, that will see anyone in the public that has symptoms. And we encourage people to to get tested, because that's going to be one of the key things that we need to do so that we can quickly identify anyone with symptoms and isolate and quarantine them, as well as interview their contacts. And so that means that we need to increase our capacity to investigate cases and do contact tracing. We also need to ensure that we have adequate isolation and quarantine facilities. And I think Director Harden will provide an update on that momentarily. And then we also need to have rapid response teams to control clusters and congregate settings, such as long-term care facilities. And we've been preparing and training people to do that locally here in Thurston County. We need to continue to make sure that we have adequate PPE supplies for hospitals, long-term care facilities, and essential workers. We also need to make sure we have enough hand sanitizer and environmental sanitizer. We need to continue to do public messaging, and then also ensure that our healthcare workers are tested and able to do their jobs. So there's a lot of things that we have to rapidly get in place over the next couple of weeks for Thurston County to be ready for any potential changes or relaxation of the stay home, stay healthy order. So our teams have been working really hard to do that. It's going to be a tremendous effort. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
I don't have the blue hand option on my Zoom meeting for some reason, so Commissioner Edwards has a question.
Are we good to go?
Yeah.
I just to keep everything in perspective, Shelley, what's our, and maybe you won't have this because I know you're busy keeping track of this particular virus, but how is this comparing to the regular flu season? And if you don't have that information, maybe at some point we can get a comparison, even like where we would normally be at this point in time.
I don't have that information available right now, Commissioner, but I'm happy to get that for you.
Okay, thank you.
Don't go away, Shelley, and this question is for Romero. Since this is a COVID-19 update, and we also have Tom Webster on the line, I see number 2 under Commissioner items is the COVID-19 CDBG funding discussion. Is that better for later, Romero, or what we have?
I will suggest that for later because that's
Okay.
a different context.
Okay.
If I may.
That's fine then. So thank you, Shelley. And now Kurt, anything update from Kurt?
Yeah, good morning, Commissioners. Kurt Harden, Director of Emergency Services. Real quick, a couple of things. The Emergency Coordination Center has been activated since March 3rd in support of public health incident management team for the COVID-19. Shelley's talked real quick about the isolation and quarantine process. That contract, the first contract was signed yesterday by the county manager. For the isolation quarantine facility. And what that's designed to do is if somebody does not have a place to go if they need to isolate or quarantine, we have the capability of taking that and having a place for them to go for their isolation or quarantine time frame. I will say that we've always had that capability. Now we have the capability of doing it en masse in case we have large scale numbers. We're hopeful that we won't need these facilities, but we have them in place just in case. I also wanted to report that we're finalizing our surge contracts for EMS this week in case there's a need to surge aid units for 911 calls. Right now, I'm happy to report that our 911 traffic is slightly down over this time last year. So stay home, stay healthy. Apparently people are healthier now and they don't need as much 911 EMS. And we're fairly happy with that, but we have that capability just in case we need it. Second, the next piece is PPE. Shelley talked a little bit about PPE. We have a change that's taking place more than likely this week. The state will let us know, but all the PPE we received from the state to date has not been charged out to those organizations that needed them. That change will be going forward. We believe, and we've been told that effective this week, the decision will come down to starting forward, not retroactive, but starting forward now, that they will start charging for that PPE. What that means is it's a slighter increase in the financial staff and the financial services in Thurston County, because we will get an invoice from the state, and then we'll in turn have to invoice out to those organizations that are receiving the PPE. So we're going to start looking at how we can put that process in place. And we are doing fairly good tracking of PPE coming in and PPE getting distributed. So it's just going to add a financial component to what we're doing. Other than that, and I don't know, Shelley, if you mentioned this, but I will mention it real quick. We've got notice that the governor is going to have a press conference later today. I think late this afternoon or early this evening regarding criteria for the non-pharmaceutical interventions. Subject to your questions, that's what I have so far.
Kurt, this is Hutch. Are we, do you think that's the best guess as to what he'll be talking about, or is he going to talk about return to work or further extension?
When I think Shelley may have more information, but I would say that what I've been told is when I say non-pharmaceutical interventions, it's, I think what Shelley just laid out for you is the standards that have to be met in order to start looking at reopening. But that's my understanding. But Shelley, if you have additional information.
That's what I believe is going to be the topic, is talking about these capabilities and capacities that are needed for Washington, and likely update on data elements that the governor covered in his press conference last week.
Okay. Ty, do you have anything?
On the general COVID-19 or specifically for Kurt?
Yeah, for Kurt or Shelley?
No.
Okay. Gary?
No, sir.
No, he doesn't have any questions. Sorry, I have muted, so I need to manipulate the mute button.
I'm sorry. Okay, that's fine. Well, thank you, Kurt. Thank you, Shelley. Get back to work, and thank you for all your hard work.
Thank you so much.
Now we're moving on to a homeless strategies update with our very own Keely Marino.
Good morning, Commissioners. Keely Marino with Public Health and Social Services. I don't have tons to update because we're just kind of plugging along. Everything that I reported last week with regards to how the homeless crisis response system is operating is still true. Lots of dedicated, hardworking individuals keeping our homeless crisis response system operational. We are working with EMS. We've solidified the outline of our plan, and we are still trying to secure staff for the quarantine and isolation site. We have a couple leads, and we're following up on those this week, and hopefully should have something well in hand. But in terms of transportation, secure storage, food, and location, we're good to go. One thing that we are starting to focus on are specialized populations with regards to COVID response. So we have Katie Strozik, the opioid response coordinator, who's joined my team in order to ensure that those folks with high behavioral health needs, substance use issues, and other issues for in specialized populations are being looked at and addressed with thoughtfulness and good planning. We're also going to take a real swing at understanding and ensuring racial equity during COVID-19. I'm very excited to hear that we're collecting race and ethnicity data for folks that are COVID positive. I know that across the nation, brown and black people have been disproportionately dying from COVID-19. And so spending a lot of time on webinars that are addressing that issue and meeting with local community members and partners and stakeholders to start having those discussions here locally. And that's about it.
Okay, I don't see any hands raised. Oh, there we go. Ramiro.
For your consideration, Commissioner, later on the agenda, we have the follow-up to the Salvation Army conversation the board had last week. If you like, maybe we can maximize Keely's time as well as Tom Webster's time and give you a perspective, follow up on the, again, on the additional shelter related to the Salvation Army.
Yeah, that was going to be my question. If we wanted to have Keely hang on and address that, or if that was a topic for later. But yeah, let's do that now. Go ahead, Keely, or whomever.
Great. So Tom is on the call, and I'll let him lead off.
All right. Good morning, Commissioners.
Morning.
Tom Webster with Public Health and Social Services. So you'll recall last week we discussed with you the Salvation Army shelter. We had requested, sent a letter and requested the Salvation Army to open up their shelter for COVID response. And they had submitted a budget, initial budget of about $527,000 for a 3-month period to open their shelter for, around 60 individuals. Based on your guidance, we went back and had a follow-up phone call. So Keely and I called, had a call with Captain John Harvey from their Seattle office, along with Captain Mark Stearns from the Olympia office and Susan Tiffany, who works in their Seattle office, to explore ways to bring that price down and kind of what they'd be able to do. So based on those conversations, they did come back with a revised proposal to shelter 30 individuals. So this would be 19 men and 11 women using social distancing guidelines on a 24/7 basis. And this would be a continuous stay shelter. So it would not be a night by night shelter, but the same individuals would have their bed secured and they would stay in the shelter. And these would be for high risk persons. They are not COVID positive. They are not symptomatic, but for those who have underlying health conditions or who are at high risk for complications if they contracted COVID-19. So the proposal they submitted was for a 2-month period for 9 weeks. It would be from potentially May 1 to June 30th, so a 9-week, 2-month period. And the revised budget was $226,000. So a reduced cost, but also a reduced number of individuals that they could shelter. So with that, we've proposed, this is a need in our community for sheltering, especially for high-risk individuals. This utilizes available shelter space. We've asked the Salvation Army to open up the shelter. So there would be real benefit to accessing the shelter and providing this service. However, the budget is still higher than what we funded our other shelters for. And it's also, the $225,000 for a 2-month period. So at approximately $115,000 per month is probably not sustainable from a funding perspective from the long term. So there's certainly some things to think about. We have proposed, listed a couple potential funding sources if you wanted to move forward with this. One is both the City of Lacey and Olympia have indicated informally that they'd be willing to contribute to this effort. I am not aware of any discussions with the City of Tumwater on this matter. Another possible source is it's 2163 emergency funds. There's $125,000 that is available. You authorize $75,000 of those emergency funds for the United Way. There's still $125,000 left that was originally designated for the Regional Housing Council Stability Site. So it would be moving those funds from that intended project. And the third potential source is also on our agenda later today is the CDBG Community Development Block Grant COVID funds. We received some funds, CDBG funds, specific for COVID response. We'll have a discussion with you later in this meeting about those funds, but that is a potential. It would be an eligible activity under CDBG. Yes.
Tom, just real quick. Tom, the $226,000 for 2 months. What was the length of period for the $500,000 request?
That was for 3 months.
Whoa, 3 months. Okay. And my other question, you've already answered it, whether the 3 big cities in Thurston County were going to be willing to help co-fund this. And so you gave me information. That's good information. Thank you. Romero, you have your hand up.
Commissioner Messer had a hand up, and Commissioner Edwards has a question as well.
Okay, go ahead, Ty.
On this topic, I'm trying to do shotgun math, but it looks to me like sheltering half as many people for 2/3 as long a time for $226,000 is actually more expensive than the original budget of $527,000. So I don't see that any concession, or if their budget was overinflated, as we discussed last week, I don't see that that's changed one iota in this new proposal. Am I right about that?
The cost per bed night is depending, before there was a range in terms of, they gave us the number of beds. It was kind of in the 60, 55 to 60, 65 range. So depending on how you count that, you are correct that the price per bed night did not change substantially, and it may have even increased slightly. So it's around $120 per bed night, which is higher than what we pay our other shelters.
It's about at least twice, if not 3 times, what we pay the other shelters per bed night. However, that's a 24/7 operation, and so, but it's still much higher than what we've paid at the other contracted shelters for 24/7 operations.
Yeah, I actually did some math today for the Interfaith Works, the 2828 Martin Way shelter that we just stood up, that Interfaith is operating on a 24 basis. We're paying, the cost is around just under $90 a bed night.
Okay, Gary?
2 things. If we do make expenditures to this particular activity, is it going to be restricted funds that are probably pass-through funds and no general fund dollars?
We are not asking for general fund dollars. I think if we were to fund this, we would need to identify whether they would be the 2163, the document recording fee funds, or another source of funds. But we are not asking for general fund for this activity, no.
But the funds the funds you've referenced are not general funds, though, is that right?
That is correct.
That is correct.
Okay, then the second thing is, don't we have some hotels out there that have told us that they have bed space available for similar types of activity at a lower rate than what it looks like this pencils out to?
That is correct. The Q&I beds, the hotels are at a lower rate. I don't know if Keely has some more information. That includes the hotel room. There's a staffing cost associated with managing those hotels, and I don't know the total cost if you included the hotel room plus the staff expenses that go with managing that hotel. I don't know what those total costs are. I don't know if Keely has information on that.
I don't have, I could dig around on the computer for the budget that was proposed for the FEMA application. However, you're correct, Tom, that the cost of the motel's rooms are much less than 120, significantly less. However, staffing is by far the greatest expense.
Well,
So if you're staff it safely, you'd have to staff it 24/7, and that cost goes up quite a bit.
I guess my question is, if we're going to make bed space available, what, do we have to have guards on duty for all of that activity? I mean, these people aren't responsible enough that they might be able to police themselves, I guess, for no additional explanation. I guess I'd use that term.
I would say that there are many people that, when we're talking about the most vulnerable that would be housed at Interfaith Works and then would be housed at Salvation Army, we are talking about people that have significant mobility issues. They have significant underlying medical conditions at times, and could have some behavioral health issues that would make it really difficult to expect them to stay in one room by themselves ad nauseum. So I think that, and in terms of if it were just for folks that weren't COVID positive or under investigation for whether or not they're positive, then they'd be able to go and come at their leisure, which is fine. But without any kind of oversight, there's high probability of there being some kind of potential outbreak.
Okay, thank you.
Keely, I have a question. This is Hutch, and that is, if we were to utilize hotel rooms, would that again only, and you kind of touched on it, would that only be for the high-risk folks and they would not be COVID positive? And if they developed COVID, would they be evicted then and have to quarantine somewhere else? What would that look like?
Yes, I would say that if the hotel rooms are for folks that are more susceptible or higher at risk for contracting COVID-19, though not symptomatic, were they to need to get tested or to become symptomatic, they would have to go to a quarantine and isolation facility. Another thing to consider is, we don't know what the future holds. And so for hotels that we may identify as a place where people can shelter, one, we have tried for 3 weeks to find staffing for the Q&I facility and still haven't been successful. But then also we don't know if for some reason in June or whenever some hotels are able to operate business as usual, then we lose access to that facility unless we were to purchase it.
Yeah, got it. Romero, do you have another question, or Gary?
Yeah, following up on the quarantine and isolation, a previous conversation with Kirk Harding, that we just signed a contract with some of the local hotels. That is really intended to provide quarantine and isolation for those who doesn't have in need of high medical needs. But also going back to this proposal from the Salvation Army, and even this reduced cost of $226,176 for 2 months. I think Commissioner Mensah just did a quick math, and really is perhaps even the same or more expensive from the previous proposal. And considering there's a lot of need out there, and perhaps the county can exercise other options, at this point, the recommendation from the staff is not to move forward with this proposal from the Salvation Army.
And I'll just say that was a tough decision because we really feel like these shelter beds would be valuable in our community and people need them. But given the cost and given the long-term sustainability that we need to fund, it was with reluctance that we're recommending not to move forward. But it's a hard decision.
Okay. Any other questions for Keely or Tom? All right, thank you both very much for joining.
Wait a minute.
So, Commissioner, the recommendation on the table is to not moving forward with the Salvation Army. I'd like to hear a perspective from the board on that recommendation from staff.
Okay, Gary, you want to start?
Well, I mean, my position has always been, we've got this problem because we have encouraged these homeless individuals to congregate in our Olympia area from all over the United States. And now we have much more of a problem than we can actually deal with. So unless we get some other funding source to recognize all of these folks from everywhere else that have came here, I don't see that we have resources to move forward with this proposal.
All right, Ty?
From a completely different rationale, I support the staff recommendation. I'm looking for community partners to step up and work with us and maybe do things a little cheaper than normal because of the crisis we're in. I'm not looking for someone that wants to charge us 3, 4, 5 times the rate to take advantage of a crisis. There's different ways that we can use our resources more effectively, in my opinion.
All right, thank you. And I'm disappointed in also making the same recommendation that we not use Salvation Army. They've been great partners in the past and a great resource in our community over the decades, but we just cannot afford to do this, even with the assistance of the other cities. Unless something changes at this point, I'm not willing or looking forward to moving on with that option. Is that what you need, Romero?
Yeah, yes, thank you, Commissioners. Also, I apologize at the beginning of this item. I should have mentioned that in your packet is a 1-pager full description of what Tom described to you in more detail if you'd like to get additional information on this item.
Okay. Good, thank you. All right, thank you, Keely. Thank you, Tom. Now we're moving on to review the BoCC agenda. Now, all April meetings have been canceled, but we are doing our legislative work on Tuesday mornings, and you'll hear that a little bit as we move on in the agenda. But we're going to review Tuesday, April 28th agenda and go through those meetings. So, agenda items. I'll let you, Romero, go ahead and take and just walk us through each one, please.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioners. And just the benefit of the viewing public, but we like to do a little bit of a hybrid as to how we have done in the past. So you will be reviewing the items for your consideration for next Tuesday morning. And the items on this agenda for this morning, you reviewed those last week, except for a couple that I will be highlighting to you this morning. So looking for your consideration for the items of on the week of April 28th, they have is a consent item, and that is your weekly approval of the voucher list. That will be for the week of April 20, 2020. And we will add the dollar amount when that item is for your consideration next week as requested by the board. Any questions?
Wait, and can we change that to 3A rather than 3C?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Moving on to department items, item 4A on the agenda provided to you is for you to consider awarding the contract for work to be done at the Deschutes River Trestle substructure. You authorized the Department of Public Works to go with a bidding process a month ago, I believe. As a result of that, on April 9, 2020, we received 9 bids to perform the work on replacing the substructure of the Deschutes River Trestle Bridge located on the Chehalis Western Trail. The low bid that we received was from Masana, not to be confused with Masama, it's Masana Construction with an N at the end, incorporated from Gig Harbor, and the low bid was $286,470. The department is recommended for you to authorize an additional 10% just to cover any unexpected activities during construction, for a total award for $317,117, and authorize the Public Works Director to execute the contract. The funding associated with this particular construction, as you may recall, is from the Real Estate Excise Tax 2, and that is already included on the 2020 budget. And I believe Scott Lindblom and David Chain are here to answer any questions you may have related to this item.
All right, Ty, you have any questions?
Good.
No? Gary?
No, sir.
All right, no questions. Does Scott, do you want to, anything you want to add?
Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Wonderful. No, nothing to add at this time. Thank you.
All right, and David, thanks for joining in. Is there anything you'd like to say?
No, nothing to add. Thank you.
All right, good. All right, then we'll move along. Oh, do you need a thumbs up yet?
No, I will bring this item for your final consideration next Tuesday morning.
Thank you.
We're just reviewing the items today.
5A.
So item 5A on your draft agenda is for you to consider approving the Washington Department of U.S. Fish and Wildlife, Washington Department Fish and Wildlife contract to accept a grant for $609,741. And this grant comes from U.S. Fish and Wildlife and is intended to continue funding the habitat conservation plan related to the Mazama pocket gopher and the listed species, endangered species. This is a grant that we were expecting from the federal government, and finally is coming to fruition. Unfortunately, the U.S. government cannot provide a direct allocation to the county, So that's why the agreement is with the Washington Fish and Wildlife as a conduit for us to receive those dollars. This particular funding requires a match of $226,580. In this particular case, the match will not be a cash match, it will be an in-kind services, and that will be the staff hours that we're gonna be implementing to continue the development of the habitat conservation plan. So again, I think this is a long-awaited grant award from the federal government, and I'll stop there to see if you have any questions.
Wow. Gary, any questions?
No, I'd just like to make sure that, so we're not expending any general fund dollars on this project at this point in time, is that right?
Doesn't sound like it.
I mean, other than in-kind activity.
Yes, yeah, so some of those staff members may be funded by the general fund, but nothing in addition to staff hours.
Thank you.
Ty?
No, good.
I'm glad to see this, this grant coming. That's very good. And no cash expenditure. That's good. Thank you. And that's about it for next week's agenda.
Yes, sir.
Unless something else pops up. All right, next is, there's no proclamations, awards, no advisory boards or commissions, no legislative update. So we'll jump right into the PIO check-in. Brian?
Good morning, commissioners. Can you hear me?
You hear you, but I don't have to see you, but I don't see you.
Okay. Brian Dominique, Public Information Officer for the Board of County Commissioners. We continue with our COVID response, just providing information to the public about what's going on with that. And that's ongoing. And then I'm going to provide a quick update about the 2020 census. Yesterday, I sat in on the Complete Count Committee. And some good news, we are in the top 5 of the counties in Washington for self-response. We're at 59.4% for those who have responded to the census. For some context, the average in the state is 56% and the average in the nation is 50%.
Wow.
However, this still means that we're missing about 40% for self-response. And I'm working with TRPC, who is leading the Complete Count Committee, on ways that we can promote self-response to the census and get the word out about it. And self-response has been extended until October 31st due to COVID-19, which means people can log on to my2020census.gov and take the census and respond to it up until then. And then many of the dates that the Census Bureau had has been pushed back due to COVID-19, but they are looking at restarting their field operations in June 1st. That's mostly just opening up their offices and building capacity. They won't be doing any in-person follow-ups until at least July 1st. That's dependent on how the COVID-19 situation or our pandemic evolves and how they can protect the people that are going to be doing that. That's pretty much it for the census, so more to follow. Continue working on that. And then my final update is we did a video with the Olympia Farmers Market that was released on Saturday that was well received. We'll have another one coming out later this week, going down and taking a look at what the market looks like. And so far that has 212 views between Saturday and today, 20 shares. And I just want to make it known that if any of the commissioners want to do something like that, that's available to them. And I'm happy to set that up and script it for you. And that concludes my updates.
Thank you. And regarding the census, that's encouraging to hear how our county is faring. We've done PSAs, public service announcements, and we talked about it the last week, and we were encouraged to be about 20 to 30 seconds in length. And Ty, you were about a minute or so. Your response is okay. And when I in order to get it down to 20 to 30 seconds, I sounded like I was all jacked up on meth. And you couldn't understand. I mean, it was just rapid speech until I found out that was just a mere suggestion. It could be about a minute. That's fine.
Oh,
So I'm redoing mine, get them in. But I thought that was rather funny. Let me see. Anything else for Brian?
Brian, how do you know exactly the percentage of response when we don't know how many people live in Thurston County? Isn't that the whole point of the census, is counting the people?
So I'm not sure how they calculate that algorithm, but the Census Bureau provides that data to us, and it's updated every 24 hours.
Who was first, the chicken or the egg, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Good
that's
question.
funny. Very funny. Gary, anything?
No, sir.
Okay. Thank you, Brian. And now we'll get into, there's no briefing or public hearing decisions pending, are there, Romero?
Yeah, yes, you have 7 items on that.
Well, I've got those items, yeah. Oh, you're considering those public hearing decisions. Okay, let's do it. Number 1, authorize I'll have you walk us through those, Romero.
Yeah, so let me frame the first 5 items, because the first 5 items are similar in nature. So I'm not gonna say let me take you back, but in this case may be applicable. And this is related as to how recognized tribal entities have exercised putting their land into trust. When the federal government took into trust or made that option available to the federal recognized Indian tribes was back in 1950s, 1960s, I believe. Prior to that, they identified the federal boundaries of a federal recognized tribe, and that is that's how it used to be. Within that context, before the government offered to take those lands into trust, they were probably owned by members of the individual tribes here in the state of Washington. As a result of those individual holdings or properties of members of the Indian tribes in Washington, they also started disposing of those properties to privately owners, not necessarily tribal members. So as a result of that, over the last, even before 1950, you start seeing the diminishing the tribal holdings, because some individual tribal members start selling those properties to individual property owners. So I start creating pockets of privately owned properties within the federal boundaries of their Indian tribe. So that is why I believe, and among many other reasons, the federal government stepped in and offered to hold those properties in trust. So there is not going to be easily disposable by individual tribal members of those properties. So that is the context, at least from my perspective, of the historical aspect of before the federal government gave an option of holding those properties in trust, and where we are right now. So the 5 properties, the 5 items that you have in there, is trying to resolve that. And those properties are smack in the middle of the federal boundaries of the Nisqually tribe in this case. And those are small properties, very small properties that the tribe would like to pay for it, and they can bring back and eliminate those privately owned properties within their reservation. And those properties, they are going to be highlighted in each one of you. And again, these are small in nature. This really is not going to be, there really is no access to those properties. And also those properties themselves had gone into a tax title, and some at least for the last 20 years. And that's how the county has taken those properties as tax title. Here's an opportunity to have a good coordination with government to government within the Nisqually tribe, and sell those properties to the Nisqually tribe. That is the context of the next 5 properties, 5 items that are going to be highlighted to you. I will walk you through each one of them as to how much is the assessed value for each of those properties, how much is what we are hoping, we're gonna be selling those to the Nisqually tribe. And also, hopefully I can highlight to you, because I'm sure you have you're gonna be asking me how much tax revenue the county would lose if we just sell those properties to the Nisqually tribe, because as you know, as soon as they go into trust, they don't pay property taxes. I will be highlighting each of those elements on each of those items before you. But before I move into the details of those specific items, I see our county treasurer is online, and you have entrusted his office and himself to surplus those properties as he sees fit, especially the tax title properties. And that was an ordinance you passed, I believe, over a year ago. And his office and his staff has done an excellent job in going through all the tax title properties and trying to resolve all those issues so the county doesn't continue to have that liability by holding those properties. Did I miss anything on that, Jeff, on the background?
Not really. I think there's two important points here, though. The first one is, we're calling these properties, but they don't have a defined boundary in their legal description. And basically what it is, I guess the best analogy I could give you is if you think about the parking lot in front of building 1, I'm going to separate that into 3,969 pieces, but I'm not going to define where any of those pieces are. And I'm going to give you 8 of those pieces. I tell you, okay, you own 8 of the almost 4,000 pieces. You can't do anything with it because you've got to get agreement from me because I'm the majority property owner. You can't even define where it is. You just know you own these pieces. And so there is an assessed value that's been assigned to them. However, that assessed value has really not delved into the actual ownership stake and the bundle of rights that are attached to them. And I think that makes the definition of these as properties a little bit nebulous. So the value is really questionable. And as we pointed out with the materials you've been given, even at the current assessed value, the potential tax income into the county is negligible. And what this will do is basically make the reservation whole so that they have these pieces that they already own a majority of.
Okay.
So any questions on the background before I go into each of the details?
Well, I have a question just real quick regarding the authorization on each one of these. They all say Nisqually tribe, private negotiation to Nisqually tribe. First one just says Nisqually. It doesn't say tribe on it. I just want to be sure we're clear if we had tribe in there.
That's synonymous, Commissioner.
Is it?
Yes.
Okay. I know it's no Nisqually City. I just want to be sure.
Yeah. And if you look at the original legal descriptions on these, which goes way, way, way back, it describes them as being a portion of the Nisqually allotment. So clearly they were part of the reservation.
Okay.
Jeff, real quick.
Yeah, Commissioner, related to your comment, only item number 1 is missing the word tribe
Correct.
on the description. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, Gary, got any questions?
Yes, I do. We've dealt with this in the past, or similar, not necessarily with the tribe specifically, but we've dealt with the treasurer taking it on to dispose of properties and get them back on the tax rolls, so to speak. And I want to commend our treasurer, Jeff Gadman, for putting this program all together and making this happen. But my concern is, under the auspices of being open government and transparent, as a general rule, we will discuss issues that we're going to take an action on. And then the following week, we take that action. And so, even though I want to move forward with it, and we probably individually understand this, even though it sounds quite complicated, is there any emergent situation at hand that would prevent us from having this be a work session, I guess, if you will, having went over this and maybe have the county manager finish the explanation, and then next week have this on our regular legislative agenda and pass it through, and I wouldn't even care if it's a consent item at that point in time. I think just to allow the public that is interested, feels they might want to digest this a bit. You know, there's certain skepticism out there, and sometimes rightfully so, but I do want to commend Jeff Gadman for all of his work that's going into this, and I would ask, is there any reason that we just couldn't put this in our normal calendar of events and have this as discussion and take a vote on it our next legislative meeting?
You know, thank you. I appreciate the comments. No, we've been in discussion with the Nisqually tribe about these properties for a little over a year now, so I don't think waiting another week is going to hurt.
Thank you.
Ty?
Just to make sure that I got this, so the at some point in the past, these pieces of the parking lot, as you characterized it, were sold to a non-tribal member, and then they stopped paying tax on that little piece that they acquired. Is that how this got into our lap?
Yeah, it is really complex, as Commissioner Edwards said. Basically, what happened is, you know, the tribes through the early part of the 20th century and the mid 20th century, their economic opportunities were really limited, and they were all suffering. And one of the things that the United States government said to the tribes was, look, for your economic benefit, if you want to parcel these out to tribal members to have them do with what they may, thinking that would give individual tribal members economic opportunity, they did allow the tribes to parcel these out. And these particular 5, I've never seen anything like this. 33 and a half years of dealing with property. I've never seen the way that these are parceled out like this. So anyway, yes, at some point, the tribal member that was allotted this share sold it to a private individual who may or may not have realized what they were getting. And then, yes, they quit paying taxes, and here we are.
Okay. I'm good with it. Thank you.
I will share Gary's observation, and that is that, and with Jeff, and I commend you as well, Jeff, for ramrodding this whole thing over the last couple of years. But on with regard to this, when I was at the Grand Mound sub-area plan, the open house, and a lot of Rochester folks were there, they had a lot of concern regarding issues regarding property and tribes and such. So in the interest of giving people an open opportunity to look at it, weigh in on it, ask questions, make comment, I'm not opposed to letting it sit for another week as well.
Ramiro has his hand up.
Go ahead, Ramiro.
Yeah, and so that is on me, that you have those items before you today. I have been working with the treasurer's office for the last 3 weeks, I believe. So in my mind, it was, okay, I've been working for so long now on those items just to understand the nuances of the requests that I put in front of you. So I appreciate Jeff's perspective. Certainly we can move those items for your consideration next week. But if you don't mind, I can probably walk you through each one of them today, and then I will bring those items for your final consideration next week. Or you want to pull them all for next week?
No, I'm good with, I'd like to hear a little bit about them, and the public maybe would.
Yeah, and then just hold them all for next week. But you want to tell us about them now, go ahead.
And I also want to add how much I appreciate working with Romero, because I've been dealing with properties and real estate for so long, I can get very, very technical in the way I speak and the way I write. And Eric has the same pitfall. And Romero has been instrumental in letting us know the best way to present this so that it's somewhat understandable, because this one is a real pretzel, if you will.
Okay.
Yeah, appreciate that, Jeff. So if I may, item number 1 on your briefing, on your agenda, and that is parcel, and I'm gonna walk you through, you have a packet in each of those parcels, so hopefully they are in order. And this is property number 21834110000. Okay? So on your packet, and I want to walk you through your packet first, is an application for the Nisqually tribe for tax title. So next, if you flip that page, is as Jeff stated, somewhat of an assessed value of that property. Next is the what is the proposed sales price of this particular property Nisqually tribe will be paying. Next, if you flip the page, there is a somewhat of a high-level assessment as to how much it will be a loss, and that's quote unquote, of property tax to the county, particular to the general fund. And lastly, there is a depiction on the last 2 pages as to where this property most likely is located based on the legal description. Okay, it's most likely, not necessarily specific. So beginning with property number 1, this is a, as Jeff stated on the analogy of the parking lot, this is an eighth of a parcel which is 3,969 parts. That's 8 parts of 3,969 parts, okay? This particular property has been in tax title since 1997. Flipping to the assessed value, the assessed value in 2020 is a total of $1,400. Moving on to next page. The proposed sale price will be $763.50. That includes the actual sale of the property and the additional fees associated with this property. The next page, out of the assessed value of $1,400, we can probably collect a total tax of $15.40. Out of that, what it comes to the general fund is $1.54. And that is really what we consider to be, and that's what I put, a loss in property taxes. But not even could be a loss, because we will, if without this action, we will never be able to have this put in the tax roll anyways. So it seems to be a loop in terms of our conversation. And again, in the last 2 pages, for your consideration, is just a depiction as to where most likely this property is located. Any questions on item number 1?
No, sir.
Nope.
Okay. Moving on to item number 2. This is property number 2183542020. The same. This is a portion of 1 of 840, and this has been in an exempt status in January 2018. The application from the Nisqually tribe. Again, the assessed value of this property is $1,400. The proposed sale price is $763.50. And again, the same assessed value of the potential loss of revenue to the general fund is $1.54. And also in the last 2 pages, there is a depiction as to where most likely this property is located. Any questions on item number 2?
No, sir.
I just think it's ironic that we're spending more time of general fund money discussing these things than we would ever bring in. No, go ahead.
Item number 3, that is property number 218352301000. And this is an eighth of a portion of 3,669 lot size. It has been in tax title since January 1997. The assessed value of this property is $2,900. The proposed sale price is $763.50. And the potential loss in property taxes to the general fund is $3.20. And again, the last 2 pages is just to give you a depiction as to where most likely this property is located. Any question on this, on item number 3?
No, sir.
Item number 4. That is parcel number, property number 2183411010. This is also just a portion, an eighth of 3,969 Ps. Also, this has been in tax title since January 1997. The assessed value of this property is $1,400. The proposed sale price is $763.50. And again, the potential quote-unquote loss of revenue property taxes is at $1.54. And again, the depiction of that property related to the parcel, larger parcel. Any questions on item number 4?
No, sir.
No.
Item number 5, that is the property number 2183544020. And this is also a 13th of 810 property. It has been in tax title since January 1997. The assessed value of this property is $2,200. The proposed sale price to the Nisqually tribe will be $763.50, including all the fees. And the potential loss in revenue related to the property tax to the general fund will be $2.42. And lastly is also a depiction as to where most likely this property is located in the quarter section. Those are the 5 items that I have. Any questions?
I don't. You Gary or Ty?
No, sir.
No.
Okay.
So I will bring those items for your final consideration next week.
Thank you. And that'll take us to item number 6 on the
Well,
agenda.
thank you all very much. I'm going to step out. I've got important treasury stuff to do.
Thank you, Jeff, very much.
Are we going to take 5 at some point, Chair, Mr. Chair?
Going to after the next 2 items. Yeah, we'll do that.
All right.
Agenda item number 6.
Yeah, next item for your consideration, Commissioners. You reviewed this item last week, and it is for you to consider an agreement between Thurston County and Thurston County Deputy Sheriff's Association administrative staff. This agreement is for 1 year, that will be for 2020, and also includes a 2.4% cost of living increase, and that has been what has been approved to all the employees in 2020.
Okay. Any questions, Ty?
No, we got a communication, I believe, after last meeting from this group, and I'm trying to remember what the thrust of it was. If anybody remembers, I would appreciate a reminder.
Yeah, I forwarded you an email, and the association wanted to clarify that perhaps this action was related to their effort to address the COVID-19 emergency.
Okay.
Gary, questions or comments?
I'm good.
All right. Is there a motion?
I would move to approve the collective bargaining agreement between Thurston County and the Thurston County Deputy Sheriff's Association Administrative Support Staff.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the collective bargaining agreement between Thurston County and the Thurston County Deputy Sheriff's Association Administrative Support Staff. Any further discussion?
No, sir.
Nope. Okay, and I would just add that I read that. Thank you, Romero, for forwarding that to us. I have a better understanding of that. And so with that, all in favor say aye.
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 Aye. That motion carries unanimously. Number 7.
Commissioners, this is your weekly approval of the voucher list. You will see a little bit of a different motion for you, which includes the combined amount of this particular weeks on the voucher list. And I believe that was a request by Commissioner Edwards, just to make sure the public understand what is it that you're approving.
Good, okay. Any questions or comments or discussion on it, Ty?
Yes. So this is probably a question for Robin. And I'm sorry, I'm not trying to put anyone on the spot. I just didn't get a chance to ask this question. I got lost as to which voucher list was going to be reviewed at what meeting. But there was, I know we've got a number of software programs that are very expensive to sort of license and stuff. And there was 2 very substantial, one was Paradigm Software and one was Tech Power Solutions. And I just thought I would like to know which programs those pertain to.
I'll look into that and get back to you.
Okay, thank you. And then one other item along those lines was under treatment sales tax. And I can follow up with Carrie, but it was listed as FRC consultant, several $1,000s. Does anyone know off the top of their head what that relates to?
No, I'd have to ask Carrie.
So Commissioner, you would like to hold approving this item until we get those answers to you?
You know, if it doesn't disrupt, I know usually we're dealing with this a week in advance, so there's always that time. And given this new system, I maybe should have brought this up last week or somewhere in the midweek, but I'm trying to get the rhythm of what we're doing here. So is it possible to hold these till next week?
Yes.
Okay, then that'd be my preference.
Commissioner Edwards has a question.
Yep, I'm going there next. Go ahead, Gary.
I'm just following up on Commissioner Mentzer's comments. Any chance we can just make sure that in the future there aren't acronyms that aren't laid out? Because I know they're very confusing to the public and oftentimes to us, so.
So I understand that, but we are somewhat limited in that these are the company names that we use to make payment.
Well, if it is a company name, at least maybe just state that, so we're not just wondering about what it is.
We'll see what we can do.
Okay, thank you.
So we're going to hold this voucher until the 28th. Okay.
Thank you.
Anything further on that? Nope.
Nope.
No. Okay. So that remains, what remains left is the commissioner items, and we're going to go ahead and take a 10-minute break because we have sufficient time to get through these other items. So it's 9:25. Let's be back at 10:35. Thank you very much. I can't hear a countdown if there is one.
3, 2, 1.
God, you have to yell at me. All right, welcome back. And again, we're doing this for the first time. We are all remote, pretty much all of us. And so it's new and exciting. It's still April 21st, 2020, and we're going to go into commissioner items. And the first one we already discussed, that's the Salvation Army, additional shelter beds. The second item is CDBG COVID-19 funding discussion. Romero.
Yes, thank you, commissioners. This is a conversation that staff would like to have related to the CDBG funding. As you may recall, as a result of the CARE Act, that was the $2.2 trillion relief package enacted by the federal government a couple of weeks ago. Within that funding, we had an allocation of CDBG funding, that's the Community Development Block Grant, in the order of $718,000 allocated to the county.
What was that number?
$718,000.
Okay, thank you.
And that is specifically related to respond to the COVID-19 emergency. So staff is going to walk you through a little bit of the background. I believe Tom Webster and Jacinda
You know what I'm saying?
Sorry if I
I'm hearing music in the background. Is that a call on the phone?
Yes, sir.
Is there anybody on the phone?
Not that I know of. But we
Okay,
need to
go ahead then.
Sorry.
All right.
So in terms of the CDBG dollars, as you may recall, goes on a rotation basis when we have the normal allocation. And that is based on it's considered to be an urban area. And urban organization was given to City of Olympia, and City of Olympia has a direct allocation on a normal basis. And also the county, which is considered an urban county, receives an annual allocation which includes all the jurisdictions in Thurston County, including unincorporated areas of the county except for the City of Olympia. The distribution of the CDBG dollars is on a rotation basis. Each year the allocation goes to the City of Lacey 1 year. I believe this is 2020 is the City of Lacey's turn. Next year will be the City of Tumwater. In the following year, which was last year, 2018, was an allocation to the unincorporated areas of the county, Thurston County, along with the South cities, which is Rochester, Tenino, Young, and Yokota. And that's how the allocation has been. This is a little bit different. And this is in addition to that direct allocation. And those are the $710,000. And again, the staff is going to walk you through as to what are the requirements of this grant and perhaps a way to move forward as to how we can utilize this additional funding. Tom, Jacinda, who wants to take the lead on this?
I'll take the lead. Thank you, Romero. You did a good job of summarizing all that. And did want to introduce the commissioners to Jacinda Selches, who's joined the county about 6 weeks ago, who's going to be working on our CDBG and home programs. So she's been helping with this and tracking all the guidance coming from HUD. We are still looking and waiting for additional guidance from HUD on these funds. They've put out some guidance. There continues to be questions around some of the specifics of these funds. But so as Romero said, it's received an allocation. There is still an additional $2 billion under the CARES Act that is designated for CDBG COVID funding that is at the Secretary's discretion to issue those funds. So it is possible we will be receiving additional CDBG COVID funds in the future. This current allocation was based on the entitlement formula that the normal CDBG funds get distributed under. We expect that the additional $2 billion in CDBG COVID funds will be distributed based on need, but we don't know what that looks like at this point. So HUD has waived several of the requirements, the traditional requirements that go with these funds. One of the most substantial is that for the entitlement funds, there's a cap of only a maximum of 15% of the funds can be spent on public service activities. The remainder of the funds are spent on capital or construction-like projects. That cap has been waived for these funds. So up to 100% of these funds could be used for service activities. And that's not typically how CDBG funds are used. So that's the most substantial change. There's also contingencies. We can spend up to 20% for administration. That remains the same. And then there's a variety of steps that we need to go through to submit a request to HUD. There's an annual action plan. There needs to be a public hearing process to submit that plan. That process is abbreviated for these funds, so we will need to have a public hearing, but you only need a 5-day public comment period, where traditionally you either have a 15 or 30-day public comment period. So the process has been streamlined a little bit. As Ramiro said, in the past, for our entitlement funds, these rotate through the various jurisdictions. It is Lacey's year. Lacey is currently reviewing applications that were submitted this year. Traditionally, the cities of Lacey and Tumwater have issued an RFP and requested proposals for applicants. And then traditionally, the unincorporated county and the South County cities, the mayors and the county manager have gotten together and selected projects. So what we're really looking for your guidance today is around the process for moving forward with these funds. Not so much the priorities or how to spend these funds, but what process you would like to use for distributing these funds. So in your packet, there should be a 2-page handout that we put together that lays out the 2 basic options. One is whether to issue a request for proposals to solicit possible projects for these funds, or to go with a regional, what we're calling a regional integrated effort, which really operating through our emergency management and command team for COVID to ensure that the distribution of these funds are coordinated with our FEMA dollars, with our commerce grants, and all the other sources of funds that we're receiving for COVID, so that decisions around what activities to fund, fill in gaps are not duplicative and are coordinated with all the other decisions being made around all the different fund sources coming in for COVID. So I guess I will stop there. That's big picture of what we're looking for and the use of these funds. So any questions we can answer for you at this time.
Ramiro, do you have anything to add at this point before we jump in?
Yes, Commissioner Hutchins, you participate in a weekly meeting with mayors on a Friday at noon. And last week, as you may recall, this particular item was discussed. The additional CDBG dollars, $718,000, and it was a recommendation to have a regional approach as to how this could be distributed. I just want to bring that to your attention and to the board's attention. That was part of the conversation last Friday. So this may be another option, or perhaps a hybrid of the options that Tom and Jessica has put before you as part of the regional integrated effort. That may be a hybrid if that is the way you want to move forward. Yes, I'm sorry. Yesterday I had a conversation with the city managers, and there seems to be a good effort to have this regional perspective. Then my suggestion would be that if in fact there is a regional perspective, then perhaps the city of Olympia may need to bring their allocation to the table, and perhaps city of Lacey may consider this year's allocation to bring to the table as well, to have a regional conversation if that is the path the commissioners would like to take.
Thank you for adding that the call, so that my seatmates know about where we were in that meeting on Friday. And it's kind of a question, but not really. Maybe it's more of an observation. It seems to me if we were to go out for an RFP is going to be a lengthier process. It's going to take additional staff time. So it allocates the money further down the road, and there may be additional administrative costs involved rather than the second option, a regional integrated approach. And I like that idea because it sounds like it might expend fewer dollars in allocating, and it'd be done quicker than doing RFP. And I don't know if that's accurate or not. Is it, Tom?
I believe that would be accurate. An RFP would be a more lengthy process to advertise that, give applicants a time to submit a proposal and then review those. So yes, I believe it would be a longer process.
And a regional approach in my mind means all of us working together and contributing to the fund as well. Not we work together and it's borne by the county. They seemed, the other jurisdictions seemed, Lacey and Tumwater, or Lacey and Olympia seemed open to that. And I don't recall Tumwater's input on that process. Perhaps you might remember that, Romero, I don't. But that's where I'm at regarding a regional approach to disperse the funding.
Commissioner Edwards had a question.
Yes, go ahead.
I guess, maybe for the viewing public, it might be beneficial, and I want to set the parameters for my question, I guess, is in the past, we've divided these funds up to different jurisdictions to do different things, but Olympia had their own. So it was everybody but Olympia is the way I understand it. So when the county manager mentioned maybe Lacey bringing forward, they don't get their own, but they have money from our last distribution. Is that what I'm hearing?
So that is correct. But, the county as a whole receive a single distribution every year, and they would have a memorandum of understanding. In 2020 is the city of Lacey's turn, as you described, as to how they distribute the funding on the normal basis.
So actually, City of Lacey is having a meeting on Thursday where they're hearing from their applicants. They've received, I believe, 5 or 6 applicants for the funds this year. And so they'll be having a meeting on Thursday to discuss the applications they've received for the allocation this year.
Now, it is possible that those applications were submitted prior to this new reality that we're living under now with the virus business. So
that is correct.
I guess I initially, so we don't have to go out for an RFP, I would like to see a dispersal designated to those jurisdictions that are eligible by population at this point, and to include Lacey, even though they got funding from the last cycle. I don't know if that would be fair to X them out of that. I think that they ought to get that and then get their portion by population. At least we can get that done and have some sense of where we're all at that point in time. I mean, we're always discussing how we can afford this or afford that. Also, these are very dedicated funds and they're not eligible to be expended on everything that our business requires. So I just think it makes sense. It'll move ahead a little faster, and then we can have an idea if we get together, and we should, to see how we can combine these for maybe the total betterment of the community. But on the other hand, if, for example, Tumwater has something they're really locked into, I guess they should be able to go ahead with that. I still think we should talk about it and see where we're at. But I think population is the best division at this point.
Okay, Robin, you want to weigh in?
Thank you. I have 2 questions. First, I believe that this is money that the state has funneled to the county, but it actually comes from the Federal CARES Act. And as such, I believe it has to be spent by December 31st of this year. Could you confirm that, Tom?
So first, this is entitlement. This is directly from HUD. It does not come through the state.
Okay.
We are an entitlement community, so this is directly, we have a grant agreement with HUD, so it does not come through the state. The the funds do not need to be spent by December 31st. There are certain activities, I think we need to have our plan identified, and certain things do need to happen by December 31st of 2020, but I do not need to believe that the funds need to be expended by 2020. And I don't know if Jacinda may have some information on when the funds need to
I
be
want to
expended.
double check that because everything else that's coming from the CARES Act is required to be spent by the end of this year, which would tell us that time is of the essence. The other question I have, or rather the question I have, is did the city of Olympia, as a normal direct recipient of CDBG, receive a CDBG allocation under the CARES Act?
Yes, they did.
They did. So they also have COVID money.
Yes, and it was around, I want to say 230,000.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well,
I think Commissioner Menser.
Commissioner Menser has his
Go ahead,
hand.
Ty.
Okay, so Lacey, in terms of working regionally, Lacey's already, as Tom said, they have 7 applications. They have a public hearing this week. There's discussion amongst them about reopening it because of kind of what Mr. Edwards said about that there may be new COVID-related, needs before the applicants submitted their applications. But they're already knee-deep in a process, so I'm not sure what the potentiality is for reversing all of that and coming and doing something collaboratively, number one. Number two, my understanding is that the money has to be spent on a COVID related, that there are strings in the sense of what the connection to the project has to be something COVID related. Is that correct, Tom?
Yes, the understanding is that it would need to be to prepare for, prevent, or respond to the COVID outbreak. So it's a fairly broad definition of how it relates to COVID, but the intent is that it needs to be related to the COVID response in some shape or form.
Now, a lot of times we do, obviously because the money is required to be spent primarily on a capital expenditure, but this year you're saying we have a waiver of that and it can be service related. And we have, when it comes to COVID impact, we have social service organizations across the community that have increased need and decimated funding because all the spring fundraisers are canceled. The donations that are coming into these organizations are, I haven't looked at their books, but I'm certain that they're down. And so it seems to me that this is a golden opportunity for us, and probably the design of us to use this money to address that, which suggests to me an RFP process to see, who's directly responding to this crisis, who has been most, and who can do that and make best use of these funds from a service perspective. I'm not sure that we need to be building anything right now, unless it's a homeless shelter. But I guess the region, I'm a little concerned or puzzled by the regional approach. What is it that people have in mind that we would do with that? Is there a project out there that's related to COVID response or resilience that we would be able to say, oh, here's an opportunity to do that? If that project is out there, I'm happy to hear that. But to me, the obvious thing is that we try to backfill our social service organizations that are doing the frontline work to respond to this crisis. And that would suggest an RFP process to me.
I will try to respond to that a little bit in the sense of, I don't think the specific projects or activities have been identified. There has been discussions around supporting economic development activities around like small business loans is a possibility. There has been discussions around funding some of the services related to the COVID response. So getting to your, the community kitchen, food banks. So there has been discussion about the need to discuss some of those services to fill in the gaps around our COVID response. And I know, Shelley, in some of the materials that HUD put out around this, they even talked about using these funds to set up to support temporary testing sites. And so with the, as Shelley mentioned earlier today, the drive to increase testing and investigation, I don't know if there's a possibility for these funds to support that effort. So to answer your question, there hasn't been specific activities identified, but I do believe services is one valuable activity that would be should be strongly considered for the use of these funds.
Romero?
Thank you. In an attempt to answer Commissioner Mentzer's question, Tom somewhat alluded to the fact is the county will be receiving a letter from Thurston Strong, and that is a group that's formed by the EDC, the Community Development Council, the Chambers, as well as the Visitors Convention Bureau. And really they're going to be asking for the county as well as other jurisdictions here, mainly Olympia, Lacey, and Tumwater, to start supporting their efforts in terms of the recovery as a result of the COVID-19 emergency, as to how they can be proactive in addressing the impacts and the needs of the small businesses and across the Thurston County region. I was expecting to have the conversation with you this morning because I received a draft letter from the Thurston Strong, but that letter is going to be revised. So hopefully by next week, I can bring to the board their specific request. And under the CDBG money, EDC and economic development is an eligible activity. In eligible activity, and some of the strings attached, as I understand, of the new money of CDBG, new money, it has to be related to address the impact of the COVID-19 emergency. So if I was to make an argument related to that in terms of the regional approach and also addressing the COVID-19 emergency, the impact to a small business related to the economic development might be something the board may consider. And that has the broad regional reach and perhaps how this money could be distributed. So that is, I just want to bring that to your attention in terms of some of the requests might be coming your way, and perhaps some of the considerations that you may see as to how we can better utilize this additional funding.
Go ahead, Gary.
I guess following up both on what Tom said and the county manager, and Ty as well, I believe that we can help almost all parties discussed here, but it should be proportionately, I guess. And I believe that Olympia receives its own allotment based on population. So I still think a population disbursement of this new money would be appropriate. And then we can have that discussion, because that can happen way faster than going to an RFP. And then we can have that discussion with other jurisdictions, referring back to what Commissioner Mentzer said about individual groups that are out there doing good things for the community. But we could find out, well, would we give 5% of ours along with Lacey would give 5% of theirs, or Tumwater. However we would break that down, I think we could do a fair dispersal, but after we do by population. I think that's the best way to initially get going, because then we're all going to benefit from EDC or some of the good works that some of our nonprofits are doing.
So I favor and I agree with a lot of the points my seatmates brought up, but I favor the regional integrated effort or approach, because we're able to identify local emergent needs and respond to those on a priority basis. And it happens faster than an RFP. The RFP, whereas typically I like that because of transparency and such, it's time consuming and our staff time consuming. But also a lot of the prospective groups that, there are a couple groups out there that are doing an excellent job, but many of the groups that are out there are having staffing needs and capacity needs themselves. because of COVID-19, they might not even be able to participate in the RFP, which will just cull the herd down even further. And so even if we did a regional integrated approach, we still might be able to use or utilize the groups that are currently doing something out there.
Commissioner Mason has a question.
Oh, go ahead, Ty. There you go.
There we go. Yeah, there's a lot of good information here, and I'm glad that, I mean, I'm hoping that you're not expecting a decision today because, frankly, you know, you're saying that we're going to get a letter from EDC that we haven't even seen yet. I'm not going to be in a position to even decide which approach until I dig into this more.
Right. Yeah, I'm not looking for a decision today, and I don't know. I hope Tom and Romero are not. This needs greater discussion.
Yeah, I think this is an attempt to bring you some potential options for you to consider. But as also what Robin has stated, time's of the essence. So hopefully by next week, I will bring this item for additional conversation, hopefully with a larger context. Hopefully by then we'll receive a letter from Thurston Strong, and you will consider what is the actual request. Because it's going to be a monetary request from Thurston Strong, and they're going to be outlining as to how they're planning to use this money. But again, I believe that whatever requests they're coming your way, it may be just the initial request on the long-term strategy to recover small businesses. So I know that Shelley's on the line, and I like, if with your permission, I'd like to give her the opportunity to express her perspective related to CDBG dollars.
Certainly. Go ahead, Shelley.
Thank you, Commissioner, and thank you, Ramiro. I would just recommend that the board have an opportunity to review the eligibility requirements of this particular CDBG grant opportunity to address COVID-19 specifically, because I think it's an opportunity for the Board of Health and also the BoCC and the rest of our jurisdictional regional partners to really think strategically about this one-time opportunity. I think that in order for the stay home, stay healthy order to be rolled back and for people to return to work and for our economy to thrive, there is some infrastructure and some things that we as a county need to make sure that we have in place that addresses long-term needs, because until we have a vaccine or effective treatment for this for the next year or two, we're going to need to ensure that our community has certain things in place in order for that to be effective. So I really think that we should be taking a look at that and take a step back and think about this as a strategic regional opportunity specifically to address COVID-19 that will benefit everybody and will also help our economy as well as prevent the spread of COVID-19.
Okay. Romero, do you want to wrap it up?
Yes, before you do, I know that Jacinda has spent a lot of time and effort working on this particular proposal. If you don't mind giving her the opportunity to provide her perspective.
Of course. Jacinda, go ahead, please.
Thank you guys for having me. I think Tom and Shelley covered it well. And Romero, strategic approach would be, a long-term strategic approach would be nice to take into consideration. Again, that 15% cap that applies usually to entitlement is waived for COVID. And I know, we don't have the time now or here to discuss more about micro enterprise, and we don't have the proposal yet from Thurston Thrives, but I think Tom and I are available to talk more about micro enterprise and economic development when we know more about what that request is, and how CDBG entitlement funds are available for that activity as well. So separate from COVID specific funds.
All right, thank you.
So, Commissioners, what I will do is, I'll bring this item again for your consideration next week. And again, today was an attempt to bring all this in front of you, and potentially some of the options that you may have down the road. And hopefully by next week, we can bring more details related to any particular options that we have before you. And hopefully by next week, I know that Jenica is online, hopefully she's listening. She's participating on the Thurston Strong effort. And hopefully we can get a revised letter from Thurston Strong by the end of this week.
Well, before we leave that topic, let's ask Jenica to see if she has anything to say or to add.
Hi.
Hello.
Yeah, so we will have that letter into you for review next week. I've been in contact with both Tom and Jacinda to discuss the eligibility of these CDBG funds for economic development initiatives that are in line with the Thurston Strong task force. So I really appreciate their collaboration in discussing that.
And who's all the collaborators on Thurston Strong?
We have the Thurston EDC, the Thurston Chamber, the VCB, Pack Mountain. We have a representative from the City of Olympia, Tumwater, Lacey, Port of Olympia. I'm probably forgetting somebody, but there are 10 members in the core group, and then each one of us have another group member. So for me, it's the Chehalis tribe that we are responsible for keeping in touch with.
Thank you for that. And because that is a broad base of support countywide. And I've had more than one person ask, they thought Thurston Strong was just another Thurston Thrives County initiative. And so I wanted you to dispel that, and you just did that perfectly. Thank you. Thank you for that. Okay, Romero, somebody else, Ty, do you have your hand up? No? Okay. Romero.
Yes, sir.
This ends that conversation. We'll wait till next week when we get more information.
I will bring this item again for your continued conversation. And hopefully at that time, you can give us your perspective as to how we need to move forward.
Okay.
And please let us know if there's specific questions that we can answer for you before next week.
All right. Tom, thank you. Jenica, Jacinda, Shelley, thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Now we're moving on to agenda item number 3 under Commissioner items, Department of Corrections grant.
I believe this is an item that you would like to have a conversation, Commissioner Hutchins?
Yes, and it's all coming back to me now. Department of Corrections has a grant, and I believe it's between $1 and $2 million for the BHOs, and our BHO would like to apply for this grant. What they would like to do is take our triage center and change it from, or expand it from a 10-bed to a 16-bed facility. But they don't own the building, the county owns the building. And in order for there to be any construction to that building, or substantial construction of that building, Thurston County needs to supply permission to the BHO, because BHO in an application for the grant has to show that the county is amenable to this as well. And so, again, I don't know what the timeline is. I don't have the those notes in front of me, but this is time, I'm going to guess, is of the essence to apply for this loan. I think it has to be in by June 30, as I recall. I don't know if you know any of that, Robin, and that information, or Romero. Okay, so I just wanted to bring that up as a discussion point because it's going to ultimately have to come to the BoCC for a decision as to whether we want to, whether we support that or not. Questions or comments? And I'll look and see if I have my notes.
Commissioner Edwards has a question.
Okay, go ahead, Gary.
As we move forward with investigating possibilities on this, has there been any talk about including a courtroom in that remodel process to deal with some of these issues that the court has to deal with?
Well, there's a courtroom already in the triage center.
Is that, yeah, but is that sufficient, I guess? They keep talking about needing a little more space. So maybe if we expanded that at the same time, it might alleviate pressure on the existing complex here,
On which complex?
right here where we're located at.
No, because that is for, the courtroom over there at the Triage Center is for mental health evaluations.
Well, right, I realize that, but it is in close proximity. It's at the same physical location as the jail. And I thought maybe we could eliminate some transport activity or just try to build in some more efficiencies for the taxpayers.
Well, I get that. I'm just not sure its functionality because it's not, it's a county building, but it's managed and run by Telecare and the BHO. So I'm not sure logistically. Robin and Romero can weigh in on that. But
Romero.
go ahead, Romero.
As I understand, this particular proposal is for the BHO to apply for a grant to use the currently empty square footage behind the triage facility. And I believe the available space is 2,200 square feet or 2,500 in that range. And I believe the request will be to utilize that space to add additional bed capacity to their functions. So I don't believe the request is to build in addition to the existing footprint of the building. I think that's how I understand the request is, but correct me if I'm wrong on my assumption, both Commissioner Menser, Commissioner Hutchins.
Yeah, I'll let Ty get in, but it was it's going from, and these additional beds would be for long-term committals as well, which would change the complexion a bit. Go ahead, Ty.
I just wanted to answer those two questions. Yes, there actually was talk of expanding the courtroom. It's 6 beds plus potential expansion of the courtroom. That's what my notes say from the BHO meeting. But Commissioner Edwards is right Commissioner Hutchings is right that that's simply to meet the needs of the ITA hearings for involuntary commitments. It wouldn't. So yes and yes, basically, but it's not something I think that would be of any use for non-ITA court proceedings. And the notes that I have are that this is super complicated in terms of what this facility can be used for is sort of caught in the crossfire between our mental health funding structures in the state, which have changed, as we know. It was supposed to be a triage center. We call it a triage center. We shouldn't call it that anymore because it's not one. But we were trying to hopefully push it back that direction with this changeover. But it turns out that the managed care organizations will not pay the rate that would be required by Telecare to have that kind of service. So we're kind of left with using it in the way that the economics of this industry allow us to use it. But in any case, I think that's kind of all underneath. But I think either way, getting the grant to expand the number of beds is is a positive. In either way, and we can work on the long-term strategy for the facility over time.
Okay, Robin?
I would just mention that I agree that I think the intention is to, if we were successful to get the grant, apply it to that currently vacant space at the CSA building. The board has looked at a number of potential uses for that space, including the possibility of putting in a courtroom. So there is an opportunity cost. Should you decide to pursue these beds, then the space wouldn't be there for other uses that you've considered in the past. But it's been a while since you've looked at those options. Just saying that there were other options that the board considered at one point in time, and none were selected.
This working from home and the office, my notes on this meeting at the BHO are my house. So Ty, do you have the dates or the timelines for that grant that were mentioned? Oh, you're muted.
It's not in my notes. I'd have to fish through email, which you probably have access to as well as I do from Mark. I don't have it in my notes what the dates are.
Okay,
Commissioner Edwards had a question.
go ahead, Gary.
I guess, I'm not opposed to what, anything either one of you are proposing, but my concern is this money's coming from the Department of Corrections, so they're a big driver in our overall law and justice activity. We've got Disabilities of Washington that are kind of keeping an eye on what we're doing, and we always face that potential litigation, and I believe we should always be looking at ways to be more cost effective. To me, adding 4 or 6 beds and expending $2 million just doesn't seem reasonable. And that's why I would like to think about the possibility of courtroom expansion for more general use. It would take care of what's intended over there, but it would also take care of additional inmate concerns that the disabilities group has. So I just think we should capitalize anytime we can on doing as much as we can with the limited resources that we have available, and I'd just at least like to have further discussion on this, maybe the pros and cons.
So it seems what we need to do, go ahead, Romero.
Yeah, and I wasn't expecting for you to make a decision today, and I think the conversation is gonna come to a point whether the county and the Board of County Commissioners give the authority to the BHO to apply for a grant to utilize a county facility for a specific purpose. I think that is a good question Commissioner Edwards raised in terms of maximizing this grant. But at this point, I wouldn't know if this grant will be slated for additional courtroom capacity or is specific to adding additional beds for mental health related activities. So that is something probably Mark can answer that question, the eligibility of this particular potential grant and what options within those grants the board could have in order to allow the utilization of the empty space of the CSA building.
So this is going to be, we'll get more discussion on this, Gary. But it seems like Mark needs to put something together then and send it to Robin, perhaps in a proposal form or at least something that will get us more talking points so we know what we're dealing with.
Yeah, that will be ideal if Mark can follow up with a formal proposal. Because again, at least from my point of view, I've been hearing bits and pieces on the last couple of weeks, 3 weeks about this. But I have not seen a proposal from the BHO, although now it's a different acronym.
The ASO. So what I'll do is, this was brought up today just to throw it out there and kind of food for thought, and more is coming. So be prepared.
Okay, I usually don't put an assignment to a commissioner, but you like me to follow up with Mark, or you like to do that, Commissioner Hutchins?
I'll contact Mark and tell him we can put something together and get it to us.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Rob. Number 4, letter to the Chehalis tribe.
Give me a minute, I'll just make a note.
That's right. I'm just being cognizant of time for the executive session coming up.
Yes, and let me frame this a little bit in a larger context. This is related to the ongoing coordination for us to build a runabout at the Highway 12 in Sargent Road, that is in the Grand Mountain area. I believe I have given the board some positive updates as to how the coordination will be. Is going to be a coordination between the Chehalis tribe, the private developer, Washington State Department of Transportation, and the county, obviously, as to how we can partner financially and operationally to build this roundabout. I believe we're in a very good position right now to strike a balance and to have all the many different agreements in place as to what will be the financial participation by each party. So this proposal before you is, this letter is to authorize the Director of Public Works to start working directly with the tribe on an easement that we need in their property in order to accommodate this roundabout. Now, going back to the conversation as to how this, trust land works, the process is cumbersome, meaning the Department of Bureau of Indian Affairs is the one who needs to give the authority to the Chehalis tribe to give us an easement for us to construct this roundabout. So this is just a letter stating your desire to delegate all the procedural steps to the Department to the Director of Public Works to start coordinating, sending the appropriate applications to the working with the Chehalis tribe to send a formal application for an easement release from the Bureau of Indian Affairs. That's really the gist of this this item for your consideration. And again, Scott Lindblom, I believe, is online to give you additional perspective related to this item.
Good afternoon, Commissioners and Ramiro. Thank you. So Ramiro summed it up quite well. We are working quite closely with the local development community, State Department of Transportation, and the Chehalis tribe to make these roundabout improvements. And really the result of all that will be improving the traffic circulation in the Grand Mound area, which will also help provide emergency service response in the Grand Mound community. So the main focus of this is the roundabout. And in this case, just like many cases, many transportation projects where we have improvements that extend beyond the existing right-of-way, in this case, the proposed roundabout in the current design will encompass or extend onto about 19,000 square feet of the property that is managed by the Federal Land Department of Interior and again held in trust by the tribe. Excuse me. So the letter before you, as Ramiro pointed out, is just going to allow our department with the director's authority to really begin and complete those right-of-way acquisitions for just this specific parcel. And again, this is roughly 19,000 square feet of the parcel at the southwest corner of US 12 and Sargent Road. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Also known as Eagle One, right?
Yes.
Right. So yeah, Scott, what is the time frame from completing the agreement with the tribe?
That's a great question. Going through the tribe, through the BIA and the federal lands, it can be a lengthy process. I do know that we'll be starting in this immediately. Once we get the authority by by the director to go ahead with this, we'll start the discussions with the tribe right away.
Okay.
I think we have laid out the schedule, which includes this process, and the schedule right now is to start construction in 2021.
Oh, 21, okay.
Yeah, at the end of 2021, we should be just about there.
Thanks for the clarification, Scott.
Ty, do you have any questions?
And also, the letter for you, there's a couple typos in there that we will fix before, if you like to sign this letter. I have Commissioner Edwards as the vice chair, we'll change that, obviously. And we'll review the content of that, do some work on the letter before you sign this, if that is your pleasure.
All right.
What is Eagle One? What does that mean?
So Eagle One, those are the developments the Chehalis tribe has identified in the Grand Mound area. They have Eagle One, Eagle Two, Eagle Three, I believe. So Eagle One is the property in which we're gonna need easements from. Eagle One is where the new hotel is located, and also where the new restaurant and distillery has been built. So all that area on the southeast quadrant is they identified as the Eagle One development. And that's how the Chehalis tribe identifies that.
Got it. Thank you.
Yep.
Gary, any questions or comments?
Well, the only thing is, didn't we grant this authority one time to Scott earlier while he was temporary?
Yeah, and
Right.
at that time, the board did grant the interim director, in that case, it was me, the authority, and that was for a very specific easement for a utility line that serviced the
Oh, okay.
Fairfield Inn.
Okay, well, I'm good to go ahead with this. The sooner the better.
Okay,
Do I hear a concurrence by the board?
Yes.
yep,
Okay, so we'll draft the final letter for your consideration and move forward.
Thank you.
thank you. And any public testimony? Ramiro?
We have received a few letters from a citizen, and we are in the process of reviewing, and I believe I have shared a response to you on some of those letters, and so we'll continue to work on those details.
Okay. Thank you. If that's it, then we're going to go ahead at 11:27. We're going to wrap this up now and go into an executive session.
Yeah, Commissioners, I believe we have a different Zoom meeting for the executive session, so we're gonna finish this Zoom meeting and then we'll reconvene only for those individuals participating on the new Zoom meeting for the executive session. So that will be it for the public.
So I will read this out. I'll read it. We're going into an executive session pursuant to RCW 42.30.110 subsection 1 subsection D to review negotiations on the performance of publicly bid contracts when public knowledge regarding such consideration would cause a likelihood of increased costs regarding solid waste organics contract. And commissioners' action may follow. We expect this to last about 30 minutes. So goodbye, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Where do we find the link for the new?